You always hear how you start is how you're going to finish, but I'm going to show you what that means. I'm going to walk you through my weekly process for getting ready for any trading week, show you some actionable steps that you can employ, and basically get down to the charts. So let's go ahead and hop over to our setup for today. We're going to be looking at a few things right off the bat just to kind of frame this conversation. So number one, you always want to reference some sort of economic calendar. So right here on our screen, we can see that this is forexfactory.com. You're more than welcome to go check it out for yourself, but what I see here is the first 2 days of this calendar week, we do not have any real news. So Sunday, Monday, obviously, no news Monday. That's a very common profile. Following that, we have some 10 a.m. news on Tuesday at Jolts. And going from there, we also have to look at CPI, which is going to be our big news driver for the week. CPI, PPI, those are data points that are continuing to steer the macro trend. So what we have to do is essentially kind of wait to frame our decisions around that. But that doesn't mean we can't look for trades early in the week if a technical setup is provided. It just means that sometimes the markets might wait until after then to give you a move. But without any further discussion on that, the economic calendar is simply a roadmap. It shows you where you might run into congestion, where you might run into issues, but it doesn't dictate your ability to execute a winning trade. Not as much as some people would like to think anyways. You can still find actionable opportunities nearly every day. But we're going to break down what my plan is for the week. So number one, we're going to be comparing a few different asset classes. If we look over here, we see ES, NQ, and YM. And you might be asking, well, why not just focus on one? Well, the thing is, there are different characteristics of each market, considering that they represent different parts of the overall, economy and different companies, of course. These assets, they have different tendencies. So something like NQ is very speculative, meaning there's more, names that are just heavily involved in tech, whereas, YM and ES have some more stable companies. So if we're seeing any sort of hit on things such as crypto, NQ may suffer more than ES or YM. There might be relative strength in one of those two. So that's what we're going to make sure that we are verifying. Following that, obviously, we just went over the economic calendar. And then from this, we will go over some of my goals for the week. But first things first, I do want to go over the charts. So we will definitely look over at the charts right now. So we'll start over here on the daily chart. Pretty simple rundown on how I want to do this. We are going to go ahead and stroll over to ES and get to the daily. And I got some levels in mind, right? So if we look here, we can see that number one, we did sweep out some significant lows, right? We had all of these that everybody had been observing for quite some time, wondering when are we going to break down here? We're there. Okay, so the question is, what are we going to do about that, right? Are we going to see some sort of sustained retracement back to some sort of area of premium? Or are we going to begin to see some sort of base build out here for us to move higher? The question is, how do we open, right? So we open in a little bit for the Sunday opening. Are we going to gap? Are we going to open flat? Do we drive higher? Do we drive lower? These are early characteristics that I will be looking for to determine which way the weekly candle is likely to develop. But when we look at our higher time frame levels, we got some right here, right? So we see this daily inversion. Go ahead, scroll this back for you guys. That daily inversion right there, that is a very significant price level that I will be watching. It has shown to hold as a support level, so we want to see if it will continue to do so. With that being said, we also have these lows that were swept out, but let's go ahead and drop to the lower time frame, and hopefully this little wheel goes away. You've seen this little loading wheel. I don't know what it's loading for, but kind of walk you through some levels. Maybe we'll even just pull up MES just to keep it simple. So this is where we're at, right? We swept down all these daily levels right here. You can go as far back as here. You can argue this one, or even just this one would be fine. That daily level is very important. We'll go ahead and annotate it so we can see it on the lower time frames. Every single week, you want to be going through some sort of process like this. With daily levels, I like to annotate the date so I can understand where it is in structure that we're looking at when I'm on the lower time frames. But what we got here is a pretty simple potential setup. So I see two main things. Number one, downtrend, right? Very, very, very persistent downtrend. We had some potential indication we might see a reversal into this previous week, but it didn't materialize. It continued to sell. So the question is whether or not this will materialize into an actionable upside trade. So I noticed this move down, breaks above. You know, you can look at that as your traditional structure shift, or you can look at it as a change in state, considering that these down candles, this breakout, right, it was now inverted. So when you look at that, you would mainly be focused on this opening price. At least I would be anyways. I like to look at stuff like this because this can allow me to determine if we are onside when engaging in longs right here. So what my eyes are immediately drawn towards is something like this, where we can see these relatively equal highs, these lower highs right here. My thought process is if we are able to see any sort of bounce, these would be very, very, very reasonable targets for the week. Even the next couple days, to be fair, right? So maybe this is my early week bias to look to trade towards 58.84, something to that effect, right? Validating this as an order block or change in state. You got the prior day low, you got the Friday low, you have the displacement potentially forming a higher low. So what you'd want to see is this continue and then potentially give you some onside entries to trade higher. So that would be the goal right there, up to this 84 area. Considering that this is 5,800 and this is 5,880, 80 points on ES can be about 2 ATRs. So, it really depends. We can kind of go back and look at the daily real quick and see some of these are as much as 133 points. But if you go back, you get 70, 80 points, some over here, 50 points. So it's within reason that they could do it in one session based on what the volatility has been lately. We can expect it to kind of contract in terms of volatility. However, the idea would be to get onsides for a move like this. I'd be looking specifically between the 9:30 Eastern and 10:30 Eastern AM session to look for some sort of pullback to like a discount, some sort of dip, some sort of lower time frame confirmation, and then target something above. And this can be traded in, a number of trades, right? It could be stabbed at once, twice, but the idea is that we draw higher. That would be my main focus. I'm not too concerned about downside trades until we invalidate this level. So if there is anything that goes right here, I'd be more so looking for it to validate as a potential inversion to then look for the upside. I'm not trying to short right here. I think the shorts, well, just to be frank, I think right here, right here, right here, right here even, those are all your opportunities. But now once you get to this area where it's really aggressively reclaiming that area, that's where you want to be thinking long. So this is ES. Looking at this structure, I want you to keep this in mind. This right here, this. So basically above 57.56 for 58.80. That's really what we're looking at. So I would say ES over 57.56 for 58.80. That would be my idea for ES. Now we could look at YM and see if that's any bit different. Pull over to MYM. And we can start with, again, the daily chart. And we can see that the daily is actually stronger on YM. We see that there is a higher low formation right here compared to ES where it had broken these lows. ES have broken. YM's holding higher. So that's what you'd consider an SMT. It is a potential indication that YM may lead the way, potentially. Lower time frames look relatively similar, right? Down, 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 downtrend forever, sweeping highs. Those are your short setups. But now that we have a sweep of these lows, very similar to what we discussed on ES, we can look at this change in state right here as well. And we can see that YM seems to be a good amount higher above this price. We have also, if we look to our left, we have this potential reclaimed level. It's just a bullish gap that was traded below. You see all the rejections below it, stabbed above, stabbed below, and then broke above, and now it closed above. With all that being said, there's a lot of context at this price. There's a lot of price action that has developed in this zone. So the idea would be this would hold as a potential inversion level to then trade up to here for obviously a run back towards, like, let's just say 43,364. So the idea is you stay above 42,642. So YM over 42,642 for 43,364, if I believe that is correct. Yeah, 43,364. So those are the rough price estimates that I'm going to be looking to trade within. Yes, can price go higher? Of course, but I'm thinking that this may be an early week bias ahead of CPI. Based on the daily structure, I feel like the next session or two can potentially see that continuation, considering we do not invalidate this setup on any sort of gap opening. But with that being said, I would look to trade to the upside on either ES or YM, or I mean, even let's go ahead and dive into it on NQ, just to kind of get complete set of data across the board. So when we look here, we see it sweeping below the lows, weakest daily closure, right? So weakest daily closure of the three. So just a doji, there's no body on it. The other two were a little bit stronger, but that doesn't necessarily preclude NQ from being worth observing. So again, you can kind of look at the daily. We can pull, a level from all the way back here, right? That would work. It swept all of these out. So the idea would be that you'd see some sort of retracement. And we're not saying new highs, maybe 50%, maybe 30%. For us, for the context of this week, we don't need nearly anything close to that. We would just be looking right there. So 733 on NQ would be the level that my eyes are immediately drawn towards. Again, because relatively equal levels, see how this almost touched it. It almost did. Relatively equal levels tend to get swept, even if it wants to continue lower. So with our lower time frame confirmations on the 30-minute, we can see that this is a sweep of the previous daily low from 1:30 p.m. March 6th into March 7th, dip lower, closed higher. There's your change in state. And once again, we could kind of compare across the assets the various inversion levels, right? This level right here that I drew from the same exact time on the other two, on YM, we're above it. ES, I believe we're in it. And then NQ, we're below it. So the comparison between the three, you can see that YM has the most characteristics of strength being shown. With NQ, on the other hand, you'd be looking to trade, obviously the move would be similar. However, it might be harder to catch the upside on NQ if it's showing more signs of weakness. So the idea would be over 139 for 733 for NQ. So 20,139 to 20,733. Those would be our levels that we're looking at for the indices. So that is my rough plan for the week. It's very simple. We will get more information after CPI. Jolts can provide some volatility, but we'll have more data to be using. So with that being said, these are my early week targets. This is where I'll be looking early in the week, to put it simply. Now that brings us to the last part of this video. We're going to go over my weekly plan. See? So my goals for the week, right? I wish to simplify my executions to one trade per day for, let's just see how long I can maintain that. The goal is to maintain a very consistent set of data. I'm going to be trading all of these setups on stream. So if that's something that interests you, you can check the description below. There will be a link. You can come find out some info. You can even get 7 days free to join the group and trade with us. So this month we're trading every day live, but in general, we do 3 days a week. And for this month, the goal is to trade, essentially, we're starting with this week, right? Wish to simplify with one trade per day. The goal is to be semi-aggressive with daily risk, meaning I'd rather have, let's just say, if we're risking $300 on the day, I'd rather have one $300 loss instead of like 5x, like $60 losses. I'd rather do that. So the goal would be to make, $450 to $600 per day based on a $300 risk with active management. So that's pretty much what my game plan is. Limit the executions, refine the risk, and focus on one high probability trade between that whole 10, or let's just say 9:30 to 10:30 8:30 a.m. Eastern. That's going to be my trading window right there. I mean, this stuff is pretty much what I already do, but when I'm writing out what my goals are for the week, just make it clear. If I find myself deviating from my system in any which way, I can just simply refocus on what it is that I know that works. So these are things that I have found out over the years that I prefer to follow. I don't find myself to enjoy taking a lot of trades per day, nor do I find it productive or profitable as much as I do find taking a singular trade idea, and really just leaning into that edge, understanding that setup plays out over time and not trying to force anything. So that is my approach for the week. If you enjoyed this type of video, be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, share with a friend, and subscribe. Until next time, I will see you later. So take care.